Hello everyone, I'm Colin Kinnett. Today's build is this beautiful entryway table. It's a hard chine. I'm borrowing some terms from my boat building days with this one. A maple cabinet with walnut features. It's got a lot of interesting things that go on here. I'm going to talk about those during the build, so stick around and let's build this table. So I've checked all my wood and it's all coming in under 9%, which is exactly where it needs to be. Okay, all of the legs have been cut to width and depth. I'm going to cut them to length now. Okay, I've taken a moment to have a look at my legs and arrange them in a way that the viewer will be looking at the table. So sort of the nicest surfaces first. And I've also marked the bottoms, you can see that, and I've marked the tops as well. So I've got duplicates, top and bottom. I know exactly where I'm going to be. The next thing I'm going to do is use my little planning jig so that I know exactly where I'm going to be drilling holes for my dowels. So I'm working on the legs right now, and at the bottom I want to have a bit of a taper just because it finishes off the bottom of the leg. So I could do a four-sided taper, which is a small angle on all four sides. In this case I'm going to do a larger taper, but just on one side, just because it actually looks a little bit better when there's a wider gap in there. And of course I'll do that on the back side as well. And you'll see this when I get finished. Okay, I'm at my tapering jig, and you can see that I've got there's a little angled piece of metal here that screws into this part here, and then the end of it sort of notches into the bottom of the leg. And the reason for that is when it's in the middle of the leg like that, you can spin that at any angle and you will get consistent angles whenever you do that. So there's the first cut. I need to release the leg here, pull it back slightly, put it back in, and you'll notice that I've got yellow tape on both of these. That's because I wanted to make sure I didn't get mixed up with where I was cutting. So this is now going to cut the back of that. The next thing I need to do is to drill some dowel holes so I can join the apron to the legs. And here I have one leg, and you can see that I've used my dowel planner to plan out the position of where the dowels are going to be. And what I want to do is I want to make what's called a reveal, and that's where the apron doesn't match up flush with the leg, but it actually sits back a little bit, so you get a little bit of a highlight in there. It gives this sort of a three-dimensional look. Now, I've already marked where I need to drill holes. What I've decided to do is I'm going to drill 4 holes. I'm going to drill 1, 2, 3, then I'm going to move the doweling jig back once, and I'll show you. I'm going to do this first hole, and then I'm going to do all the rest of them off camera, but you'll get an idea what this looks like. Well, now it's time to do some finishing. And as you can see, I've put tape over top of all the holes because I don't want to get finish inside where the joints are going to be. And I've used this 3/4 inch tape here to cover over everything. And it just speeds up. It takes a few minutes to put this on, but you know what? It speeds up the finishing just tremendously. I'm using a product that I use very frequently. It's called Osmo. This is a luster finish, so it's a little bit between a matte and a gloss, a high gloss. I love this kind of a finish. It gives just enough of a sheen to the wood. The other thing you'll notice, I've got very sharp edges here. I have broken the edges, but I'm borrowing a term from my boat building days and calling this a hard chine. And a chine is basically a ridge, and when you have a hard chine, it means there's a very sharp edge. A soft chine, particularly in boat building, is when it's sort of smoothed over like that, and you'll get that on hulls where you have from a hull going top to bottom, for example, you'll have a smooth edge. That's a soft chine. A hard chine is where it has an abrupt edge. So I'm going with this hard chine look for this cabinet. I haven't done this much before, but I'm really liking the look of it. So we'll see how that turns out. I'm just going to go ahead and do the finishing. I'll show you briefly what it is, and then I'm just going to go ahead and finish all of these pieces. So all you do with this Osmo is you just wipe it on. I've got these little cloths. These are actually Osmo cloths, something new that they've come up with. And the first time I tried them a year or so ago, I just fell in love with them. So now I don't use anything, but they're just such a great product. They hold the material well, and you can just wipe it on. That's all you do is wipe it on. I'll put 2 finishes on here, and that's all I'll need to do. So the next thing I need to do is to get the top glued up. And what I use for alignment, I used to use biscuit joiners, and I discovered that every time I used them, I had to fuss around by clamping the ends in the middle so that they would be even. When I got my Dowel Max, and the first time I used it for using a glue up instead of the biscuit joiner, I got perfect results, excellent results, and I've never stopped using it. In my humble opinion, if the only reason you ever buy one of these is for doing glue ups, he's doing excellent glue ups, and I'm going to show you that when I get through. So I'm going to go ahead and drill some holes and do a dry fit, and I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm just going to show you quickly how I position the dowel hole. So the first one, in this case, I'm going to use just one dowel hole, and it's just the end of the jig. And what I do is loosen that, drive it down, and I have this measuring device that fits in that hole, and now I go right like that. And in this case, now I'm going to use the first hole. I'm going to repeat this all the way down. Take that out, slide it down, and I'll do the same thing on the other side, and I'll just position the holes all the way along, and they'll all line up perfectly. Okay, so both sides are drilled now, and I put these undersized dowels in here. I just sand them a tiny bit, otherwise they're too hard to get in and out. And for a test fit, it doesn't matter. There's the top. That will align. Now, these boards actually are fairly flat, but sometimes when they're not flat, you might have to wiggle them a little bit to get them in there. But now, because I've got such a good fit, look at that. Those boards line up almost perfectly. All I need to do is sand that now. But the other thing is I don't have to put clamps anywhere along here to align the tops because they're uneven. They're even all the way along, so it just saves me so much more work. So all I need to do now, pull this apart and put the final, take all of these out, put some glue on there, put the dowels in. You don't even need to use dowels in the glue or glue in the dowel holes. Put it together and clamp it up. Okay, I have some walnut pieces that are accents to the little table. So I'm going to run all of the wood that I'm ripping, I'm going to run all of that at the same time. Okay, the next thing I need to work on is the aprons. This is the front apron, and all of the grain, of course, is running horizontally. So when you've got horizontal grain, you can't just stick another piece in that's got vertical grain. So I've cut little horizontal pieces that are going to fit in here that are matching grain. And what I need to do now is I'm going to be putting glue in all of these places here and touching that there and sort of gluing this all together. I'm not going to show you this because it's a bit tedious, but I wanted to show you what I'm doing. All this tape is on here is just where the glue is going to squeeze out. It's just going to save me cleaning up glue in all these little tiny corners here. And I have clamps here that I'm going to glue it to or clamp it to my squaring jig here. Another really good use of this squaring jig. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this all together, and when we come back, I'll let you have a look at what it looks like. There we go. That's what it looks like all glued up. I'm going to let that cook for a few hours, and then we'll take it apart. Okay, so I have all the parts cut out, and I'm anxious to do a dry fit on this. I'm not going to film the putting together. I do use slightly undersized dowels, and you see I paint them red so that I distinguish them from the live ones that I use when I do the final assembly. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this together, and we're going to have a look at it. Okay, well, there's my dry assembly, and I wanted to check to make sure all the dowel holes, they all line up. And I've got a couple clamps on here, actually 3 clamps on the sides, because if I don't put that on there, it's loose. I'll loosen this one up here so you can see that the whole thing is sort of wobbly because I put the loose fitting dowels in there so that I can take them out easily. So that's all looking good. What I wanted to check to make sure that all the reveals are all the right distance and all of them are aligned. They're all the right distance. Everything lines up perfectly. The next thing I need to do with this is I'm going to sand it. I'm going to pre-finish all of the pieces before I do the final glue up. The top is already made, and you saw me cut the lip for the top, so that's already made. The only major thing I need to do next is the drawers. That's one side done, and now I can turn it over. And because I've pre-finished this, I can use in this case it's a damp piece of paper towel, and I don't have to worry about glue getting on anything because it wipes off, especially with a little bit of moisture on there. It just wipes off clearly because that moisture or the finish that's already on there just allows that glue to come off so simply. I don't have to worry about glue marks. And so the next thing we'll do is install a drawer. So everything is set up here. Of course, the top will need to go on yet, and there's a little bit of function with that. And there's some shelving down here that'll have to go on. But the next major thing is going to be the drawers. And I have some full extension slides that I'm going to use. Well, and there's my finished entryway table. I'm absolutely thrilled the way it's turned out. I'm very, very happy. I love the contrasting walnut on the drawers and the back, and how the doorknob matches the same radius as the cutaway in the back, so that I didn't have to do a round over. So it keeps with that same theme of hard edges, and of course the little bit thicker top on here makes it look a little bit beefier. So all in all, I'm really happy with it. Let me talk about the shelves for a second. So down here, this area here, we'll have some little baskets like this, and these are perfect for holding hats and gloves and scarves and toques and things like that you don't want to put in shelves, but they're still handy. So they'll sit in here with a similar basket like this. This lower one will be for a shopping basket that we use many times, frequently used, and we keep it right handy there because it's so handy for shopping. You don't need to use a cart when you go there, and it's just a handy thing for grocery shopping. So all in all, it's perfectly set up for our lifestyle, and that's the advantage of woodworking, is you can custom make things to fit your lifestyle and what you want. I'm Colin Gannett for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.